Our next speaker is called Javier. He's from Argentina. He's the CEO of a company called Crowdor, and he will talk to us about testing in DevOps. Very interesting thing. So, be welcome, Javier.
Hi, Rui. Thank you.
The stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me share you my screen a little bit. Okay. I think I'm sharing now. Thank you, all the team in DevOpsStar to let me be part of this presentation. I'm very proud of being in this important event. This is our first time in a US event, so thank you for letting us be part of this event. So let's talk about a little bit about DevOps and testing in DevOps, which is the topic that we work very, very frequently in our projects in Crowdor. So I try to be as quickly as possible to let them space for making questions at the end of the session. So basically, looking at the current software development challenge that we face today, most of us will agree that digital transformation, especially in the last 2 years, was a critical one, and that move forward or challenge us as a technical people to develop software and make all the development process around this more challenging than before. So the implementation of Agile and DevOps methodologies is more frequent now. There are more fast changes, so there are more demand for frequent changes. Everything all the time was fast requirement for the business, but right now I think it's more and more frequent. But there's a couple of additions that are important to include into the challenges that are security. Everyone must know that with the current threats in cybersecurity, the security is not optional anymore. We cannot rest on the decisions that we made. We have to review that frequently and have it into account. And performance as well matters a lot, because with the amount of changes that we are making to the software that we build, anything could affect performance and has to be taken into account. All of this challenge, I think, that makes DevOps as the best solution and to develop software right now. I think for me it's not a matter of choice right now, which is the methodology. Obviously, it's a process that the teams has to follow, but I think that the DevOps culture is the model that we need to follow. So most of you must be familiar with this picture, that at the end is a matter of interconnect and interchange between different roles in the software development process. So we have to plan the code, we have to code, we have to build, we have to test during the process, release, deploy, operate, and monitor. Everything has to be done continuously. So that's the main difference with the previous process that we follow in the past, like mostly Agile or even waterfall approach. So right now, all the roles are interconnected and interdependent between each other. So they have to be connected, communicated, and in the right way. So going deep on this, what do I think is DevOps? I would like to bring you some definitions that are interesting or acceptable for me. Probably there are more sections of DevOps, but I think these are the best representative definitions that we can choose. So it appears as a response to intrinsic drawbacks of organization structure based on functional silos. Why we say that? Because in the past, and even now in most of the companies, there's the organization structure of the companies having development teams, quality teams, operations, security as a separate organization units, makes that the communications and the objectives between the different areas probably are not the same all the time. So that makes problematic somehow about the needs and the priorities of each team makes sometimes generates problems between the different teams and the objectives. So why we think that these problems appears? Because having different incentives, of having different approaches in the areas of the people belong, generates that sometimes the added value to the product is not always the first priority. So again, what we think is that compared to the traditional approach before DevOps. So we need to eliminate those silos, right? I think that the separation of the areas between different responsibilities, as I mentioned before, development, QA, security, infrastructure, etc., make difficult the communication, and sometimes the objectives are not the same. So open and assertive communication is critical to having a DevOps culture. Have a teamwork spirit, have aligned incentives and responsibility. That's what I mentioned before. If we align the incentives of the security area, for example, like having 0 critical vulnerabilities in all the software that we develop, and probably having a small vulnerability in one software, a piece of software that has to be delivered, that incentives are not aligned and probably will create an issue in the deployment of that small solution. So having that alignment is critical, and they have to work together, not to be stoppers of the process of delivering value to the customer. Another important thing that we face all the time in our customers and in our projects is understand that the failure is part of the process. It's not something to be punished. It's something that we need to take as a learning in the process of development in this way. And failure is part of that, and we need to move ahead quickly, understand the root cause of those failures, and improve the process. So continuous improvement is very attached to that concept of having failure as part of the process. Respect the other's opinions. I think it's important to understand that there's no stars in the team, right? We know, and having many years in the development industry, we know that sometimes there are heroes, or there are profiles of people that are very important for the teams because of their technical capacity or the abilities that they have. But all the opinions in the team, including all the roles that I mentioned, are important. So having into account the point of view of all the team members, not just developers, infrastructure team, security team, and testers are important. So all of them has a different role, have a different point of view, a different technical skills that has to be taken into account to avoid these problems. And for that, it's important to generate a trust environment. We cannot do this without a trust environment and without having clear rules of that we don't want to punish the mistake or the failure. We need to understand that, and we need to demonstrate that with a matter of attitudes between the teams. It's not just saying that we respect the other's opinions and failure, but then when we have a problem, we punish that person and reduce the confidence on that. So we need to demonstrate that we are confident and we respect the failure, and we can create a trust environment, because otherwise the people that find problems usually will stay shy, and we probably don't discover all the problems that we have in the process of development. And finally, and not less important, is customer focus. Customer focus is very important because we need to focus not just in security, not just in performance, not just in functional behavior, but we just focus as a whole team of development and operations to provide value to the customer. If the things that we develop don't provide the value, but they are perfectly running in the infrastructure with security, performance, etc., it doesn't make sense to develop that. So what is not DevOps? I think an important thing, and I will move more forward quickly, it's not, DevOps is not an IT problem, right? Usually it's happened like that, or it seems like that because appears or is promoted by IT, but it's not the entire responsibility or problem of IT. The entire organization has to be embraced with DevOps culture and principles that I mentioned in the slide before. So IT can be the catalyst of this behavior and this culture, but not the end. We don't do DevOps to say we do DevOps. We do DevOps because we think it's a matter of improving the value, improving the flow of bringing value to the customer, and we think that is a better way of building software, basically. So business has to be part of the change, not to be a spectator of the change. It has to be part of the change, be involved in the change, and the stakeholders has to adapt to that and be part of the paradigm. So people participation is essential. So again, what is not DevOps that probably are, I think, a common misunderstanding in the industry, is not a role within IT. It's not a DevOps role. Basically, that's a deformation of the term, but there's no DevOps engineer. Usually, we find we accepted terms like DevOps engineer as the person who knows how to automate pipelines or automate deployments or automate implementations of Kubernetes in the cloud, or they know very, but it's more a cultural behavior. Also, there's no DevOps area because it will be a contradiction of what we said until now. And it's not the people that manage the CI/CD pipelines. It's reducing to that is a very simplistic approach, but it's all what we mentioned before. And it's not the one that do automation. DevOps is a cultural change, and where trust, confidence, failure as a learning process, and collaboration is basic. So, what is quality in DevOps? So, moving forward with the topic of this talk, as well as we say that we need to include all in the same page, not just developers and IT and operations and security. We need to include QA as well. Sometimes happens that in agile process that QA development teams do the work, they build software, and then by the end of the sprint they left QA a small amount of time to do their job and validate the quality, functional or non-functional behavior of the application. So adding QA, IT and operations and InfoSec as part of the of the team with the same responsibility that the developers reduce the friction of the team. So the whole team is responsible for the QA, for the quality, for the security, for the performance, and for the functional behavior of the application. Having that in mind, is possible to build a trustable environment, a good sense of behavior of the people to the team, and be responsible as a whole team with no difference between one role or the other in terms of responsibility for the value. And I like to mention this paragraph of the Phoenix Project, which is, by the way, a great book to understand DevOps and DevOps culture. So, what is the essence of quality in DevOps? Basically, the first bullet, I think that is a good synthesis of what we expect from quality. Having automation and having a process to develop, build, package, and deploy software faster, we need that feedback to let the development team to correct the things that they write code and write problems very quickly. So the feedback is essential. As much as faster as we give feedback to the development team, the better the solution. And when I say feedback, it's not just say, okay, this is a bug, this is wrong, this is not working. We need to state clearly what we found as a QA people into the software, and not just doing manual testing or functional testing or automation. We just also need to add performance, security issues, and we have to be capable to do that. So following slide, I will talk about that role needs more deeply. So avoid the silo and work integrated with the team, with product owners, developers, site resilient engineers, infrastructure, etc. So quality is be part of the team as the same as we ask to be integrated in the team. A member of the team, like the QA people or the testing, has to be the responsibility of be part of that integration. So everyone in the team has to be responsible of that integration and collaborate to that instead of moving a part of the problem. So avoid the bottlenecks at the end of the sprint. It's doing a sprint of development and use the last 2 days of the sprint or the last day and weekend of the sprint to do testing is not a good approach at all in DevOps or even in Agile. It's something that has to be avoided, and we need to shift left as much as possible the testing process. So moving forward and early testing, not just manual but also automation testing, is critical to finding or to finalize the sprint of the piece of software that we deploy in each commit as better quality as possible. Why? Because we need to accelerate the feedback and to avoid the distraction of the developers later on. If we do testing later on, after the deploy and after the finalization of that feature, probably we find problems that our developers are not in the focus right now to solve. So we need to accelerate that process as much as possible using tools and using techniques that accelerate that process. Integrate non-functional tests. This is what we mentioned. Do performance, security, accessibility, and usability all at the same time. Not leaving that for the end of the project because it's less important than the rest of the functional behavior. So if we talk about a little bit about automation, where we are having a lot of experience doing this. This is a Martin Fowler approach that has a couple of years, but I think is still valid for some environments right now. So based on a traditional or old approach of finding bugs, unit tests are low, and we have a lot of a lot of tests in the top of the pyramid or the inverted pyramid. So we automate somehow. We have some small unit tests, but we make a great effort in the manual testing. This is not so sustainable in a model of DevOps where we need to deploy functional software in question of minutes or days or hours. We need to change the approach. And how we can do that? With an approach of preventing bugs. So making a big unit test, if we can move forward to TDD approach, will be best of the scenarios where we write the test before writing the real code. So as soon as our code is ready, the test will pass and the software will run. But also to complement that, we can write tests in different approaches or different sections of our software, right? We can do component test automation, we can do integration automated test, we can do automated API test, but with behavior, not just checking the API. And finally, we can do UI automation test. The pyramid has that shape because the effort of doing unit test compared with doing UI automation test is less. So this is the recommendation, to write as much test automation as possible, where it's simple and easy to do and easy to run. The UI automation tests usually take 4 times the effort of writing a component test automation. So if we don't do this, we need to make this bigger, and it's a lot of effort and a lot of time consuming to execute that. So then finally, exploratory testing is not forgotten in this model. We have to include it anyway, and the combination of all these approaches will prevent bugs and give us an agile testing approach that is more fitable to the DevOps environment. So if we look at the process, sorry, there are some Spanish terms here. If we look at the development process as a process itself, not just a practice, we can see that during the development process and building unit test, we have to start very early in the process to do exploratory testing and functional testing. Even in development environments, we have to do this early on to accelerate the feedback to the developers, but also start to do automation, at least writing scenarios or do mocks or do different kind of tests that we can start very early in the process of development. So if we do this in parallel, we can guarantee that at the end of the sprint, we can have a decent kind of testing process in DevOps environment. So after a sprint finish, we can do an integration test manually, exploratory, but also combine all the automated tests. That doesn't mean that we cannot run this test in the middle of the sprint. We have to do that. We have to run this test, no matter that are incomplete or all the pieces of software are not developed yet. For that reason, exist mocks, contract tests, etc. But as soon as we, as developers, start finishing features, we have to be ready to test that, not just manually, but also automated. If we have a clear definition of user stories, acceptance scenarios, acceptance criteria, we can start very early writing scenarios to test these features. And as soon as we start testing this, we can give more value, and it's a virtuous circle that embrace the quality in the process. Obviously, we can include a small performance test at the beginning of specific features and security scanning as well as code quality. So if we invert the focus of this and looking based on a pipeline that is very common on DevOps practice, where we build, this pipeline is an automation process to build, package, deploy, and test software. We see a lot of tools that we can include in our set of tools, including functional testing and including automated testing, not just unit testing, but also automated testing, doing contract tests, etc. All the tests that I mentioned before. And we are very fan of using Cucumber or BDD as a support of this test, because we'll democratize the understanding of what the software has to do and how to test that process. So what are the skills that we think that QA people needs to have in DevOps? And this is my last slide, and then probably we can join for Q&A in the following session. Having all that I mentioned before, we need to understand that the QA or the testing people have to evolve in their roles. It's not the same that it used to be, and the challenge are bigger and more technical. So right now, having knowledge about shift left practices of what I mentioned to accelerate the testing as much as possible, implement this virtual cycle that we think is a critical aspect, starting from user stories, acceptance, having acceptance criteria, writing test scenarios, and then automation and monitoring those scenarios is critical for the testing role. Having knowledge about test automation, right now, having all this process of automation that I mentioned before, we have to understand at least how this can work. Probably you don't need to do coding of test in particular, but you have to understand what you are using. So you have to know how to use this test automation, no matter if it's a developer or it's an automation engineer who write the code. You have, as a tester, you have to understand how to use it, how to understand the reports, how to understand the results, and then if a bug appears, has to understand the real or the root cause of that. And in the pipelines, all these pipelines, it seems complicated, but it's not that complicated if we understand. And if it's something that we need to understand where is the problem, and when the problems appears, how to report efficiently and to give feedback quickly to the team that has to solve that. Work integrated with DevSecOps. QA is not isolated of all the things that I mentioned. Security, operations, development is all part of the same team, as well as QA. Knowledge about reading logs and monitoring, having the tools as a critical thing has to be part of the tools that someone in QA in DevOps has to know, and understand performance and security as well. So as I mentioned before. So that's all basically that I have to present. These are the services that we deliver with Crowdar, just to let you know about us. We do all these services, test automation, performance, security, but also we do DevOps culture hands-on, and we implement deployments. We do coaching as well, and we develop tools. So we develop tools to accelerate that process that I just mentioned. So I invite you to take a look at Lipia. It's an open source project that we developed during our experience, and we use very frequently. It's open to download and read and use the code. So I invite you to all the audience to take a look at this, and I encourage them to use it. So thank you. This is all my contact points, my email, and all the websites from Crowdar, Lipia, and the Crowdar Academy, which is a tech school that we launched a couple of years ago to teach people to do testing and RSE and be ready to a new job. So thank you, Rui. I don't know if we are okay with the time. Thank you for the opportunity. You're on mute, Rui, I think.
I think that not anymore. Thank you very much, Javier. So I think that we can go directly into our session of questions and answers.
Okay.
Let me bring some of our guests to. Hi, Johannes.
Hey, everyone.
Hi, Johannes. Nice to meet you. Hi, David.
Hi, David. Hi, Dean.
Hello.
Hello, Dean.
Hello. Hi, Ignacio.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Jorge.
Hello, everyone.
Let me see if I think that I haven't forgot nothing. No one, sorry. So we have several questions very interesting here that were sent through the chat. And please feel welcome to answer if you want to add another view or you would like to have a different vision of another colleague, please feel free to it. Okay. So the first one that I would like to bring to you is, what's the difference between DevOps engineer and SRE engineer when it comes to work? Feel free.
All right. Sorry, I didn't know how to jump in.
Okay.
As we discussed in the past, so this is my personal opinion, by the way, and feel free to disagree with it. DevOps is a set of culture and a set of principles, similarly to Agile, for example. SRE is a really well-defined engineering arm by Google, and that SRE Engineer is a good job title. DevOps Engineer is an industry-wide job title, which I really disagree with, because you don't call anybody Agile Engineer either. However, I think what they are trying to say with it is DevOps Engineer in an incorrect way defined as people who are practicing DevOps. SRE Engineer is a software engineer who is trying to implement automated software engineering capabilities utilizing DevOps principles.
Okay. Would like to add something?
No, I totally agree with these colleagues here. Yeah, totally agree. DevOps engineer is a matter of something that I think that the HR industry, recruiting industry created in somehow, but obviously SRE is a proper definition, or a more close definition, more built by Google. Yeah, built by Google, but I think that they define the role more clearly. And if we think that we just talk, and I think that the guys mentioned the same, the DevOps is not something that an engineer can do by their own. It's a matter of the collaboration between the teams. As if we hire a DevOps engineer, we can have DevOps just because of that. if we can do that, we will be very, very lucky, but I don't think that is the reality. So I agree with the concept completely.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. Let's go to another one then. This one is for Jorge and Ignacio. What do you consider to be main selling points for GitOps compared to other methodologies?
Okay. Do you want me to answer, Ignacio? Or yeah,
no problem.
Okay. So the main selling point is to ease the operations, and I think that having your operations in a controlled manner and with in a only or in a place like a Git repository and working like a developer doing in the day by day is the main point. So you can accelerate, you can avoid human errors, you can make rollbacks quicker, and I think that's all. It is very related to operations and the way that you are deploying. It is tied to DevOps, but it's, for me, it's more like on the operation side, and it's just the new way of managing the modern infrastructure like Kubernetes. So I would say.
Yeah, for me, the point is that there are not other methodology to do that. I mean, this is the natural evolution of the way that you manage your infrastructure. So it is what it is, and you should do that. The other alternative is to do it more manually, and that's all. I mean, so it is what it is when you start to work with cloud native architectures or Kubernetes related architectures. This is, of course, the efficient way to do it. So
interesting. Anyone would like to add something?
Yeah, maybe it's not a main selling point, but I think it's also something younger or new developers are very much used to, because GitHub Actions, GitLab CI, it's basically GitOps, right? You update your YAML, you can track it with Git. Probably people would be confused if you told them you have to do this stuff manually. So yeah.
It's I think, you can add another layer into this. Is the whole motivation, in my personal opinion, is the enablement of taking ownership. If one team who is design something, have the capability, they are enabled to be able to go through all of the steps themselves. The reason why all of these technologies are defined as code, self-service, and have configs in order to run is because it all comes down from a development point of view. Can I repeat the same action in multiple different environments in the most simplest manner possible? So the same people who design it and build it are the one who's going to test it. They are going to be the one who run it. And basically, I think this is the enablement side of things. And DevOps is a good methodology to help that kind of mentality come to life.
Maybe to add to something else, we've heard it before. DevOps is a kind of a culture thing, right? Git is a tool that can help you, live this culture. I think very, very well, because you can take a step back. You can learn about the history by going through the Git history, and if this ties into your deployment workflow, for example, this is just insanely useful, I think.
Okay. We have one more technical question here that is related to it too.
Yeah, I think that question was during my talk. I mentioned this quite briefly, maybe, but you can change some previous commit in your Git history. If you want, I can share my screen just a second, and then I can just simply show it again. We will have some duplication now. Can you? So now we are. Can you see it? Can you see my terminal?
Yeah.
yes.
Perfect. So again, we start in interactive rebase again on the main branch. So this just tells us we are working on these 3 commits. And now if I want to change some of these commits, I can simply do an edit on these commits. I also showed this, I won't go into detail here, but basically what now happens is once I save this, the rebase will stop once we are at the commit we want to change. Then I can change the commit, and then I can continue the rebase. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. This one will help a lot of people. Hi, there are many software around. What is needed to begin with as a junior DevOps?
I'm gonna start here, but of course everyone should add something. But I think that in terms of DevOps, it's not a question, as my colleagues said before, it's not a question about tools at the beginning. It's more a question about understanding the concept that is behind the term DevOps and what it means in terms of culture, but not only a culture for a big company, but I mean everyone that starts to work with new technologies around cloud and start to develop something should at least understand the principles of DevOps just to have an easier life in terms of create your pipelines, automate everything in terms of deployment of your applications, so you don't have to care about the normal operations that some years ago you have to check manually. So it's a question about optimize time and become a better developer, or become a better architect, or become a better operator. So after that, you have tons of tools, and you can make your selection about what fits to your needs. But first of all, is to understand what it means. But as we said before, it's not about become a DevOps engineer itself, more to understand the principles and to adopt it to your needs and to your solutions. That's my opinion.
Okay. I think that the people doesn't understand when they come to the market that we have much more a culture of development than the use of tools for development. I think that the recognition of the culture necessary to understand how works the structure of the DevOps is much more necessary than to learning to use tools. What do you think about it?
I could say that I agree with that, but also at the same time, being a technology company that not just provides services but also build products, I think that the bar is higher than before. So it's not just about it. It's right that the culture is something that you need to understand before, but it's like the kindergarten. The kindergarten is the culture, and then you need to learn how to write and how to read with the new tools, because otherwise you cannot execute the culture, because you are an alphabeto in Spanish. you know how to read and write, right? It's important. So I think it's a matter. It happened to us in particular where we build software in a microservices architecture using Kubernetes, and we fail continuously. we made mistakes all the time because we think that we are doing the right things, and sometimes when I had to do a demo, I had this bunch of features without deployed to the production environment that we used to do the demo, and we say, oh, we have a problem. We sell this, but we have this problem at home. So it's something that you need to know at least some basic tools, understanding a pipeline, understanding how it works, a pipeline, understanding how Git works. Anyway, probably you don't need to do what Johannes made in the demo. Probably it's too advanced, but at least you need to understand what is a branch, what is a merge, what is something. Work with these tools, because it's a new set of tools that I think that one of the things that makes all these SRE engineer roles so demanding, because the understanding of this set of tools is not science fiction, but it's difficult to find people that understand multiple languages, not just YAML or Git, but also having some basic knowledge of development to do infrastructure as a code, for example. So it's a matter of culture, but you need to know more than that. I think that's my conclusion based on our experience.
Just to build on what Javier says, basically, if the question can be interpreted in a way that what are the type of tools which you may want to start with, is version control, is pipeline, is declarative orchestration, is utilizing anything where you can demonstrate and test out how an immutable infrastructure, an idempotent deployment looks like. If you understand that and actually try to achieve it with whatever tools you like, you're already gaining experience. There are hundreds of tools out there which capable of doing it. If you know what they're for, you can then put it to the right box.
Okay. Let's shift off our point of views. We have an interesting question. What are the most common obstacles when implementing unit tests? Who would like to say something?
Go on.
Yeah, well, no, I can say that is, I think that the main obstacle is to understanding why you have to do unit tests. I think that the main problem usually is like the developers, who in my point of view are the responsible to write unit tests, see unit test as a demand from the organization, or as a demand like a good behavior, right? It's not a tool, like, or they don't, probably the developers don't do unit tests, probably don't perceive the value of doing unit tests early enough. And when they have to do it, it's later because they already write the code, and it's something else that they have to do to deliver what they built. So they see like a decoration, I think. So the one good approach, and I'm not saying that we are doing that, because as I said before, sometimes we have the same problems internally. But one good approach is to make the opposite process. So write the test before the code. So if you want to do unit tests correctly, you have to write it before, in advance, not later on after you have the code running. So with that in mind, you can use it as a tool to test your code. And if you see like that, you give value to that. Otherwise, it's something else that you have to do before deploying your solution. That's my perspective.
Okay.
Also wanted to just add to that, when somebody asked me this, and I literally had this question came a couple of hours ago from somebody else, and that's why I was smiling big time, because basically we broke it down. Well, code quality, define success criteria, dependencies, all of these things, which makes it super hard. And this is internal to us and to my own personal experience. But every single time we're trying to do it right and we start building it, is, what's the code which you are trying to test and how is it written? And if that's not written intentionally in the right way, then it's super hard. It comes back to what Javier said. If you do an exercise, test-driven development, which you refer to, it's much easier. If you don't, retrofit it, super hard. Success criteria, you do the test for, again, as Javier said, why are you doing it? If you don't know why, you just run a test and that's meaningless, why are you even bother? And when you have both, but you have a service which has so many sub-dependencies all around, you don't do unit test, you do the integration test at the end. So it is super, super hard if you were not prepared to do it from day one. That's probably my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I think that the developers, most of them, do the unit tests as an obligation and not as a tool to gain in quality and results. And we have several difficulties that are related to the point. Well, let's go for the next one. Is SRE position considered as shift career for a software developer with experience 9 years? What do you think?
From my opinion, I don't think it's a shift career. So I think it's like like a movement for taking maybe more responsibility, but in the way that you are in charge of keeping the lights on. But it's not a different career than a software developer. Maybe you have to go deeper into the infrastructure topic and so on, but I wouldn't say that it's like a thief. I don't know what you guys think.
I mean, I can just applaud you for that comment, because that's literally what I was thinking as well. Like SRE, as we said before, is the software development approach to automation, to operational problem. SRE is primarily developers who are focusing on infrastructure, focusing on this type of automation and testing, but they are still developers. It's a bigger shift if you try to go from a traditional operation to SRE, because you must learn into the development practices. And that's a bigger shift. That's what I would call a shifting. If you are a developer, you just change your focus to the bits which you were less focused on before. But you're not changing. I honestly think you're not changing your role. You're expanding your point of view. Meanwhile, from an operation to SRE is actually changing the role.
Okay. We have one more question directly to David. David, can you elaborate on zero-touch automation? It sounds great, but it sounds difficult to achieve in an already established organization.
I'm not sure why we say it's difficult. It took me 3.5 years to push it through. So yeah, basically, zero-touch automation was one of our biggest dreams when I joined, and that was one of our big objectives. Means that we want to make sure that when you choose, so you know this famous statement from Netflix, which is why they said that their goal is that whichever developer joins on day one, they can push a code and it will arrive to production on the same day, or not, because the test will catch it. And that was the whole point. This is what we wanted to achieve as well. So dream big. The zero-touch automation means that the entire cycle from merging the code up until it goes through all of the tests and reaches production, gets deployed and gets validated, it is without a human interaction. So it's multiple CI pipeline connected with CD, with your unit test, with your DVT, with your synthetics and user validation, all combined together, including the fact that production is locked down and no human can manually bug around there. And that's what I meant around zero-touch automation. It is super difficult because of two things. If you already have an established pipeline and process, it is really hard to change people's mind and retrofit it. So to be fair, what we've done is we created a new production account. We created a new set of capabilities from scratch, prove that they are identical to be able to host in infrastructurally and architecturally. Therefore, we moved it over, or when we moved it over, all of the infrastructure code and all of the automation was in place. So instead of trying to retrofit it back, we built it again with the same requirements, moved over, hosted it, and literally just switched over. That was an easier step forward. Still does not account the people and policy sides, which is much harder, but technically that's what we've done.
Okay, thank you. We have space for one more question. I would like to have one short answer for each of one of you for this. Do you believe in having extensive test automation on non-productive code, as in performance, security, accessibility tests running in CI on DevOps infrastructure code? It sounds good, but rarely do companies do that. Do you believe it?
Can I start in cracking it? My opinion there would be, sure, if all of them are self-service, then you can make a decision what is needed for you. Should all of these options be available for you and for your code to run it on a non-production place? 100%. Should you run this every single time for every single one of them? Definitely not. So, in my short answer, opportunity should be there. You should be able to decide whether it's meaningful for you or not. You should be able to do it, but you shouldn't do it all the time.
Okay. Who would like to add something?
I would just like to agree, basically. it depends, right?
Me too. Me too.
Yeah.
Okay, dearest ones. So thank you very much for your presence, for your insights. It was great to be here with you. And I think that we have another announcement to run now, but I would like to give my thank you for each one of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, team.
Thanks for
Thank
having me.
you for the opportunity.
Bye.
Nice to meet you all.